Claire Spencer stood absent-mindedly in the bathroom, lost in her thoughts. Her mind was heavy today. She had a good reason for it. Their only daughter, Cataline, was leaving town for her studies. Her husband, Norman Spencer, a scientist by profession, was usually busy with work but always tried his best to give time to the family. Since morning, their new neighbors, the Fear couple, had been quarreling loudly again. It seemed they could not get through a day without fighting. The house felt empty after sending Cataline away. One day, while Claire was reminiscing over old albums, she remembered her past as a successful cello artist, a career she had left behind for family life. Suddenly, she heard her neighbor Mary Fuhr crying. Out of curiosity, Claire tried to approach her, but as soon as Mary noticed, she quickly walked away. Claire suspected that Mary was being abused by her husband, and that perhaps she needed help. But since they hardly knew each other, Mary seemed unwilling to confide in her. When Claire shared this with Norman, he brushed it off, saying such issues were common between couples, and that there was no need to interfere in someone else's life. Claire, however, wasn't convinced. The next morning, she visited their house to start a conversation, but seeing a bloodstain on one of Mary's shoes, she returned home deeply worried. At the front door, she was pleasantly surprised to find her dear friend Judy, whom she hadn't seen in a long time. After spending some time together, Judy left. That night, heavy rain poured down. When the electricity went out, Claire went to shut the windows and noticed Warren Fuhr loading something wrapped up into his car trunk in the middle of the storm. Alarmed, she woke Norman to show him, but by the time he came, there was nothing to be seen. The next morning, Claire secretly observed the Fuhr house. As she approached, she felt as though the front door opened and shut on its own. Perhaps it was just the wind or a loose lock, so she tried not to overthink it. That evening, while playing near the lake with her dog Cooper, Claire threw his favorite ball into the water. Strangely, Cooper refused to go fetch it, trembling as if terrified of something in the lake. When Claire went to retrieve it herself, she thought she saw the figure of a young woman floating in the water. At that very moment, Norman called her, pulling her away from the thought completely. From that night onward, Cooper went missing. No matter how much she called, he didn't return. Just as she was about to go back inside, the door once again opened by itself, and the radio suddenly switched on. Such a thing in broad daylight might have been brushed aside. Terrified, she rushed to Norman's lab. Hearing her account, Norman informed the police as a precaution, especially since he had to attend a conference out of town soon. The next morning, the same strange incident repeated. The front door was wide open again. Irritated, Claire went to shut it, but just then, she heard the sound of something falling. A photo frame had crashed to the floor, the framed picture of the Vermont Society's Dubond party. Staring at it, Claire was overwhelmed with confusion. She could not remember ever attending that party. That afternoon, Claire saw Warren's car leaving. Seizing the chance, she went to the Fuhr residence. To her shock, it was Warren who answered the door instead of Mary. Startled, she asked about Mary, but Warren avoided the question, excusing himself by saying he was late for work. From then on, Claire began keeping a closer watch. One evening, Cooper suddenly returned home on his own, but he wouldn't stop barking at the front door. There were muddy footprints leading straight up to it. At that moment, Norman unexpectedly came home and was stunned to see Claire in such a state. Amid all of this, Claire Spencer completely forgot that she and Norman were supposed to have dinner with his friend Stain that evening. After dinner, when they returned home, the night passed without any unusual incidents. But the next day, while fixing the broken photo frame, Claire discovered a sculpted key inside the room. To her surprise, the key did not open any locked door in the house. Puzzled by many thoughts, she went upstairs and suddenly froze. Warm steam was coming out of the bathroom. Terrified, Claire stepped inside. Her body went cold when she saw the reflection of a thin young girl in the water. Shaken, she consulted a mental doctor named Detron. During the session, after answering some of his usual questions, Claire startled him by asking, "Doctor, do you believe in ghosts? There's a girl's spirit in my house. Her eyes are green. She looks innocent, almost enchanting. Strangely, she doesn't harm me, but it feels as if she wants to tell me something. What do you think I should do?" Detron laughed gently and advised, "You should try to contact her. Find out what she wants." Following his advice, Claire called her friend Judy and together they sat with a Ouija board. They attempted to establish contact with the spirit. Slowly, the candles flickered out, the air grew heavy, and suddenly the board's marker moved while the front door burst open loudly. But Cooper's barking and restlessness led their attempt to fail. As Judy left, Claire begged her not to tell Norman about any of this. That night, another truth came to light. About a year ago, Claire had suffered a car accident which caused her to lose fragments of her past memories. Since then, Norman had been extra careful about her well-being. Even after Judy left, Claire noticed steam rising again from the bathroom. Gathering courage, she went inside, only for the girl's spirit to appear again and frighten her. Shaking, Claire finally asked, "What do you want?" At that moment, words appeared in the mirror. Terrified, Claire reached for her phone to call Norman, but she suddenly noticed her computer typing repeatedly on its own. Panicking, she rushed to Norman's lab, crying out that Warren Fuhrer had killed Mary and that Mary's spirit was haunting her. When she even mentioned the Ouija board, Norman grew furious. He was too preoccupied with his research to tolerate what he considered Claire's nonsense. Storming out, Claire ran into Warren himself and, in front of others, accused him of murdering Mary. To her shock, she was told that Mary had simply gone to her in-laws' house for a while. The Spencer couple found themselves humiliated in public. But Claire's mind kept reeling. If Mary was alive, then whose ghost had she been seeing all along? Determined, Claire once again consulted Dr. Detron, telling herself she would face her fears head-on, no matter how terrifying. Back home, she found that Judy had left her a book on witchcraft as a gift. Soon after, Mary appeared, pretending as if nothing had happened, and tried to converse. Relieved, Claire welcomed her warmly. They sat in the garden, talking happily. Mary admitted that she and Warren did fight often, and that on the night Claire saw him in the rain, their quarrel had escalated so badly that Warren angrily packed his belongings and stormed out. Claire realized how gravely she had misinterpreted the scene. That night, Claire attended the Dubond party to clear her mind, where she met Mrs. Rita. Smiling, Rita said, "My goodness, Claire, I'm seeing you after last year's party. How have you been? I had heard you were supposed to come earlier today." Her words unsettled Claire. Something about the previous year's Dubond party seemed tied to the memories she had lost after the accident. Unable to recall anything, she forced a polite smile as Rita excused herself. The following day, while working at her desk, the Dubond party frame suddenly fell. On the back, Claire discovered an old newspaper clipping about a missing girl from a year ago named Madison Elizabeth. Curiosity burning, Claire searched Vermont's missing person reports online and found details about Madison Elizabeth Frank. Even more chilling, Madison's picture revealed green eyes, the very same eyes she had seen in the ghost haunting her. But why? And, most disturbingly, Madison's disappearance still remained unsolved. One detail raised even more suspicion. Madison's college was the very same institution where Norman had been a lecturer. When Claire confronted Norman with this information, he dismissed it angrily, calling it madness, and urged her to see Dr. Detron again. Realizing Norman would not help her, Claire decided to investigate on her own. She tracked down Madison's house and met her mother, who described Madison as a stubborn and whimsical girl, difficult for others to get along with. But she had no idea why or how her daughter had disappeared. While exploring Madison's room, Claire found a lock of her hair. Back home, Claire performed a ritual from Judy's witchcraft book using the hair, attempting to connect with Madison's spirit. Suddenly, Claire became possessed. When Norman returned home that night, he found Claire acting unusually seductive and aggressive toward him. Though Norman was drawn in, the atmosphere in the room suddenly grew heavy, and a sweet fragrance filled the air, stirring old memories in Claire's mind. She recalled fragments of that fateful night. Then, in a chilling instant, Norman saw Madison's figure flicker through Claire's body. Horrified, he pushed her away, and as Madison's hairlock fell from Claire's hand, she seemed to awaken from a strange, haunting trance. Claire Spencer began to recall some hazy fragments of memory. On a rainy night a year ago, after returning from the Dubond party, she had caught Norman with Madison in a compromising situation right there in the house. Madison had also been at that party, and the sight of Norman with her in such a way enraged Claire so much that she had thrown her wine glass to the floor. Now she realized that was exactly what Mrs. Rita had been hinting at. It meant Norman had indeed been involved in an illicit relationship with his college student. The argument between her and Norman had escalated so badly that Claire had left to stay at Judy's house for some time. From Judy, she also learned something else, that she herself had once seen Norman with another unknown girl at the Adamant Cafe in a nearby town. Though Judy had wanted to tell Claire, she remained silent after Claire's accident, fearing it would worsen her condition. Claire still felt that a strange mystery lingered, something deeper she had to uncover. The next morning, another shocking scene awaited her. Norman was found unconscious in the bathtub. Luckily, the medical team arrived in time, and his life was saved. When he eventually recovered, Claire confronted him directly. "Norman, were you involved in Madison's disappearance?" After a long, tense silence, Norman finally admitted, "Yes, I was in a relationship with Madison, but when I tried to end it, she threatened to kill both you and me. The very next day, she went missing." Claire's suspicions suddenly aligned. Seeing her in such distress, Norman reached out to a paranormal expert through his friend, seeking guidance. Yet the haunting continued. One day, Madison possessed Claire again and dragged her into the lake, pulling her toward a hidden box beneath the water. By sheer luck, Norman arrived just in time to save her. Fearing for Claire's safety, he burned Madison's hairlock and begged Claire to give him a second chance to start their life anew. Claire did not argue in that moment, but deep inside, her doubts about Norman only grew. Weeks later, the couple planned a trip together. Claire used this opportunity to travel to Adamant, the very place where Judy had once seen Norman with Madison. The sculpted key and the mysterious underwater box were still at the front of her mind. At the Adamant Cafe, Claire's eyes drifted toward the antique shop next door. There, among the displayed jewelry, she spotted a necklace, exactly like the one Madison had been wearing in her missing person report photo. Not only that, the same type that required the sculpted key. Her suspicions intensified. That night, after returning home, Claire secretly went to the lake, retrieved the hidden box, and opened it with the key. Inside, she found Madison's necklace, the very same design as the one she had seen in the antique shop. This proved one thing: Norman had lied. He was Madison's killer. When Claire confronted him, Norman's story changed completely. He confessed that Madison had once written a letter to Claire, intending to expose their affair, and Norman had burned it. He admitted that Madison had blackmailed him at the Dubon party, forcing him back to the house that night. But after taking drugs, Madison had overdosed and died right there. Terrified that the truth would destroy his marriage and career, Norman had hidden the evidence, placing Madison's body and her car into the lake. After hearing the full truth, Claire realized Norman was nothing but a murderer. She informed the police. Norman, as planned, calls the police to confess and surrender for Madison's disappearance. But later, when Claire checks his phone, she realizes that Norman didn't actually call the police. Just then, Norman appears from behind and covers her mouth with the drug he had been researching. Claire becomes paralyzed, though she can still see and feel everything happening around her. That's when Norman finally reveals the truth. He admits that he had been involved with Madison for a long time, but it wasn't love, it was only physical. Over time, however, Madison began taking the relationship seriously. When Norman tried to walk away, Madison threatened to expose everything to the college head and beyond. Fearing the destruction of his marriage and career, Norman drowned Madison in a bathtub, just the way he was about to kill Claire now. After Claire's accident, Norman tried hard to bury the past and move on. He says, "I wanted so many times to set things right with you, but today I have no choice." Norman then calls Judy, telling her that he won't be home from the lab tonight, and asks her to check on Claire in the morning, setting up the perfect cover. After arranging everything, Norman leans in to bid Claire a final goodbye. But suddenly, in Claire's eyes, he appears as Madison. Terrified, Norman stumbles, hits his head, and falls unconscious. Meanwhile, the water keeps rising, leaving little hope for survival. Summoning every ounce of willpower, just enough to open the bathtub sinkhole, freeing herself, only to discover that Norman has disappeared. By then, the drug's effects wear off, and Claire hurries downstairs. She finds Norman injured, grabs the keys from his pocket, and speeds off in the car, gasping for breath. But as she reaches the bridge, Norman, who had been hiding in the back, attacks her. Claire struggles desperately to defend herself. In the thick fog, Madison's ghostly figure suddenly appears before them. Startled, Claire jerks the steering wheel and the car plunges into the water at the exact spot where Norman had once drowned Madison with her car. As water fills the car, both fight desperately to escape. That's when a chilling sight emerges. Madison's spirit rising from the depths, moving toward them. Horrified, both freeze, but Claire seizes the moment and escapes from the water. When Norman regains consciousness underwater, he sees that familiar face, the one he last saw before Madison's death. Madison's spirit pulls him slowly into the depths, back to the place where she had taken her last breath. And that was today's movie story. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.